What's up, everybody? It's your favorite displayer's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at my kind of Mortal Kombat Storm Collectibles collection and diorama setup. So just to get this out of the way, I am using an IKEA Little Billy or a Small Billy. I'm not sure what they're called. They're about 14 inches wide and 6 foot and some change tall, and they are lit with the IKEA Norafly system. And my collection is Storm Collectibles. I have a couple of the old Mezcos in there just because I have nothing else to do with them, so they're just in there, so they're not laying in a box somewhere. So we'll start with the top. This is where I intend to have kind of all my big bosses. So Montaro and Goro currently. Eventually Montaro will go in the center, and then Goro and Kintaro will flank him on either side. And nothing crazy, just underlit, which gives them a little bit of a menacing feel, and standing up on top of the shelf so that I take advantage of all the shelf space. Moving on to the first diorama, it's Shao Kahn's arena from Mortal Kombat 2. And it's obviously layered, and it has room for a couple figures, of course, but also more importantly, it has room for the throne with Shao Kahn on it. However, if the collection gets too big, so to speak, which doesn't seem to be the issue, I can always move Shao Kahn to a kind of platform with the top bosses and move figures onto where his throne currently is. I'm not sure how I feel about this diorama. It didn't come out quite as well as I wished it had. Something is lost in the background, and I think it's mainly because I don't have the kind of lateral space. I'm working with the Little Billy, so if I had more of the lateral space to kind of really showcase the arena aspect of it, I think it would have worked a bit better. But all in all, I think it does a decent enough job and sort of nods to the game where nobody mistakens it for anything else. So I think that ultimately it works. I just feel like it's one of the weaker of the ones that I did. Now, moving on to one of the stronger ones is Shang Tsung's Courtyard. This was interesting because I was working with a smaller vertical space. I actually had these shelves spaced wrong, and I already put my Norafly lights in, so they were kind of stuck unless I wanted to kind of disassemble all of it, which I didn't want to do. So I used a lot of low risers as opposed to any kind of 2-inch risers or anything like that. So all the styrofoam is kind of quarter inch, or half inch, or maybe 3/4 inch at times. And I think it works. I like the little wood planks on the bottom of the floor for the fighting space, and I like the little bump out pieces and stuff like that just adds a lot of character. I think the background works. I bought those Chinese dragons off Amazon, and my friends and wife privately clown me for that, but it works. It looks right. And then I made the little fence, the red fence, which was a real pain in the neck to kind of cut out a 1/4 inch foam painstakingly, but I think it was ultimately worth the cost of admission. I think it really helped sell it. I'm really happy with the background of this one too. It's one of my favorites, in all honesty. Moving on to the third one is another one of the ones that is a bit weaker to me. It's the Living Forest, and once again, it's the challenge of trying to have the kind of vertical risers so that I can display as many figures as possible within a small confined space, but also allow for some of the personality of the stages to come through. And I wanted to choose sort of the most iconic stages, so I chose all my stages from either Mortal Kombat 1 or Mortal Kombat 2. But this is just a lot of foam and a lot of brown paint. I am really happy with the depth of the background here. Like, I do kind of feel like you are in a forest. Like, I think it kind of worked, and that was a first for me in terms of trying to achieve that goal with really kind of washing out the trees that were in the furthest of backgrounds and bringing a little bit more color to the trees in the foreground, so you ultimately are in the diorama itself with very vibrant trees. So I think it kind of works, and I use like a lot of like crafty little grass to kind of put around the edges and stuff to sort of helpfully tie it all together and hide some of the seams between the background plates and the kind of foreground ground risers. Once again, with 4 levels of space for vertical figures to kind of stand, should the collection get big and have to really cramp them in. As we move on to the back half, we have, first of all, the kind of the ceiling pit. I forget what it was called, this stage. Maybe just the bridge? Was it called the bridge? It had that like ceiling full of spikes at the top of it. So with this one, I had to do a couple of interesting things, and namely they were to get PVC pipe 1.5 inches, which I had laying around the house, and I cut it to form the pillars, and then I took 1/4 inch foam that was cut real thin and wrapped it around the top and bottom and painted them gold to kind of solidify that. I then bought a bunch of plastic skulls off of Amazon that were like, I don't know, you got like 10 for $5 or something. And I cut them in half, obviously used the 2 full ones at the top and repainted elements of it. And then the 2 bottom ones, I used the same ones. I just cut the bottom draw off just to give it a little bit more character, to give it a little bit more kind of spice. And then the yin yang symbol is supposed to be painted brown if you like try to match the video game sort of aesthetic in terms of accuracy, but but I thought it looked better standing out with the metal surface. So I just kept it. And it was just a necklace that I ordered once again off Amazon for I think $7. You know, it came with like a little rope necklace and ultimately it does the job. And even though it gets really cramped at some of those 2-inch layers at the back, there is room for a figure. I have pre-measured it and pre-planned for it. So if worst case scenario, I'll cram them in. Hopefully I won't have to. This line really isn't evolving at the pace that I wish it were. So it hasn't really been too much of an issue. And with them doing ninjas over and over again, who knows if we'll get many original molds in the first place. Moving on to the Deadpool, not to be confused with the X-Force member. This one is probably, it's one of my favorites as well. It's up there with the Courtyard for me. A lot of different tricks are used for this. I went to Michael's and bought some of that metal kind of necklace chain for like necklace crafts, and then used some earring hooks for the actual hooks for them, and then just sort of draped them all over the place and used tape at the top of the shelf to kind of tie them up and space them out a bit. And all of that works really well. The background is actually kind of an interesting story. So the metal for the grate itself is actually metal grate used to kind of keep or prevent gutters from clogging. So you put this metal sheet over top of your gutter so that leaves and debris and trash and all that kind of stuff doesn't get into it. So I just got that and then cut it. You know, I had it for another diorama, I think for the X-Men, one of the X-Men villain ones, and I just cut it to kind of close enough shape and then put it in and then painted it. The styrofoam around it for the bricks is actually a piece of scrap that Chris Pinkerton of Crashbox Customs and co-host of Nerd Rage Radio had kind of laying around that he gave to me as look, I'm either going to throw this away or you can have it. So I was able to salvage like a little piece that he had kind of cut out from it. So it's an interesting little look and adds a bit of flair to the Deadpool and helps sell it, because one of the big challenges with this stuff is working with the kind of minimal, lateral space, but still making it have the kind of iconic elements that you remember from the video game in terms of the decoration and stage, so that it kind of draws your eye in and really makes you kind of have that nostalgic feeling. Is hopefully the goal. I'm not sure how well I pulled it off. And then moving on to the bottommost layer is the pit. And I had to have it, of course. And I think many people would prefer if I had the pit on one level and then the kind of base or bottom of the pit on another level. But once again, I'm crammed for space and I'm really trying to get the most out of every shelf in order to display as many figures as hopefully possible. So I wasn't really afforded that luxury. It is well done, I think. It's one of my favorites also. I think I really did a good job on the moon. The spikes are actually nails that I've driven through. I marked them out and measured them on the bottom and then made little holes so that they wouldn't puncture the styrofoam too bad, and then drove the nail through the holes, so to speak, so that they kind of were spaced evenly and looked well enough. And then I gave him a quick dose of paint and then splattered some blood on him. And then I took the skeleton prop or accessory from Montaro and then just sort of threw him in. And, I can remove him if need be, but right now he's not really taking up too much space. I also bought those little Chinese lions, which once again, my friends and wife gave me a hard time for, but they really do sell it. It's like those little details that sell it. Once again, here I'm kind of experimenting with the background and the mountains and such, and making like the furthermost mountains a little bit harder to define and the closer mountains a little bit more detailed. I'm not sure if it worked well, but I think the moon really works well, and I used a little bit of light sourcing with a light color blue airbrush on some of the steps and such to kind of like the moon is really shining in, and I think that did kind of work. So this is another one of my favorites as well. I think it turned out quite nicely. And that's it. I've been debating back and forth what to do with this collection. It's not really the most prolific company in terms of cranking these things out, especially now that the ninjas and cyborgs are accounted for. Things have slowed down to pretty much a snail's pace. So I wasn't really putting forth a whole lot of stock in how much they're getting out. And I just argue with myself back and forth because the lateral space would have been nice. But ultimately, I'm pretty happy with choosing the little billies. I think that they'll kind of display enough figures throughout them to kind of fill them up and also make them look complete and not like a empty collection. Even with what I have on there so far, it's pretty full. Not full in the sense of capacity, but full in the sense of it doesn't seem like it's missing something, which I've found is just as important as anything else. So thanks for taking a look at it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time.